Ajay, please.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. Let me begin with my story as to how it happened with me. And that story is that when I talk of the most fundamental, I teach law in the law school, and when I talk of the most fundamental provision of law in India, that is the right to a dignified life, the guarantee of the right to a dignified life. When I talk about it in my class, my feet tremble because I know what I'm saying is not reality. It doesn't seem like a provision of law. It sounds like some fiction. And then comes the question, are we fictitious people? Because we are into some kind of fiction. And I raise these questions together with my students. What is it that we are really doing? And when we dig further into this most fundamental provision that I have just talked about, it is actually just not a fundamental or the most fundamental provision of law in India, but it's the most fundamental promise that we the people have made to be the people, to everyone. And I think education has a great role in this arena. The pursuit of education cannot be bereft of the idea of social responsibility or inclusivity or community participation. It's not just community participation, it's community engagement. Education, the pursuit of education cannot happen without people, without their concerns, without the larger objectives, the larger promise that we the people made to be the people. So what is the way actually? How do we address it? And when we looked at these questions, we thought that there is a complete disconnect between these promises or provisions of law and their reality. But as we worked along to address this disconnect, at least I realized that it is just not a disconnect or the disconnect. It is some kind of a conspiracy. And I really don't want your attention on the term conspiracy, but your attention on the seriousness of what I'm saying actually, and what I'm feeling, and what I know, what I see around. And therefore I say that law, its language, its structures, its mechanisms, and their language, they all together weave a conspiracy against common people. This is what I say. This is my statement which I make to my students. And I tell them that you may completely disagree with me, which is absolutely fine, but at least consider what I am saying and why I am saying. And we see our institutions all around, institutions of democracy, institutions working to uphold human rights, legal aid, access to justice, what we teach in our universities. They talk of all good things happening, but in reality, things just don't happen. So one finds it really very difficult to find a way to address some of these situations. Your data will tell that things are being done, things are happening. People will come up with a lot of data, a lot of information, and this is what they say, that this is quantitative glut. And when I started working with communities, engaging with them, I realized that people who are engaging with communities, they are engaging for numbers, for information, for that quantity of information, that they have so much of information, they have done so much of work and all. But is that work really sustainable? So that brings us to the part of sustainability. So whatever little that we are doing as universities, social responsibility, is that really sustainable? Or we are really looking at numbers that, okay, we have done these many camps and this initiative and that's initiative. Now there is this Unnat Bharat Abhiyan. You were talking about 5 villages to be adopted by every educational institution or university. The IIT Delhi is spearheading this initiative called Unnat Bharat Abhiyan, where they are also promoting adoption of villages by educational institutions. We are also part of that initiative, and we have adopted some villages in the vicinity of the university. But beyond that, the idea is that pursuit of education cannot happen without people. So pursuit of education must be taken as a matter of trusteeship, being pursued on behalf of millions of people who would never know what education is, or would never have the wherewithal to know what education is, but at the same time, their being together in that pursuit is extremely important if we are really pursuing the cause, and that is the larger promise that we the people made to be the people. So I'll stop here and thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Ajay. I think you've really made some provocative statements that are, at the heart of what our discussion really is. How do we get to something that's really full of meaning in this situation? While you were talking, I was just thinking of this Ram Guha's book, which is Savaging the Civilized. And I don't know, I suppose many of you have read it already. But what I found for me was really enlightening there was when Verrier Elwin goes to the tribals and he starts to enact some of the educational, economic development policies that the Nehruvian government had put in. And suddenly he realizes these were meant to destroy tribal society. So I found that really interesting as something to think about. And the author goes into some detail, but it's really interesting what you're saying. I think that goes back to whose reality, and that would be part of it. Okay, not last, Gaurav.
Last, least, and lost. After all these, listening all these comments, and is it working? Yeah. Oh yeah, now. So I work very closely with the activists. So it's hard for me to come to such conferences. I come here, I somehow feel very alienated. Don't feel like I don't belong here. And I swear I promise myself that I'll never come back, but then again next year I dressed up and come back to present myself. So when we talk about, okay, thank you. So there are like two ways, two approaches to look at the education, which we call one is called the relational knowledge, where that education can only be understood by its connection to relations of dominance and subordination in the larger society. So this is in a way what I'm saying is that the relation where a person understands the indigenous knowledge or the epistemic knowledge. This is one approach, and then the second is the repositioning, which is very important when we talk about the role, the social responsibility of the university. Where the best knowledge is done by the engagement with the relation and understand other by engaging with him, and that's there you take a epistemological position. And I always say that before I start, I just after listening all this presentation, I was thinking what is the responsibility in fact, and where we stand as the as a part of higher education process. Are we also responsible for any of these things going on in society, or how we contribute to the higher education. Like for example, I was the other day I was talking to some students in DU who were doing research on different issues. They were from geography, and uh, I said, what is that? What makes you come here, and what is that makes your parents so successful? What you call these days, that you're ranked very highly, you are successful in your career. So what is that? What makes? So student answered. They said, sir, our hard work. I said, but is there anything else involved in this hard work that you are sitting here? Who is behind? What is behind your success or your parents' success? So then finally I suggested, I said, can you imagine, like all of us sitting here, can we imagine being a Delhiite? Can we imagine daily life without a maid in our house? Just a small observation I was sharing with students. I said, can we imagine daily life without a maid, housemaid? But then, when our parents were both working parents and getting success in their careers, how do they pay back to that maid? I know my friends who are married, they write both spouses, they write their PhD, but I see there is no mention of that maid who spend whole day taking care of their kids, who cook for them, clean for them. So there's no mention in their things. Here I call that this is what we are missing in what you call the inclusive education. This is not inclusive. And then the second aspect is there any mention of these subjects in the curriculum? I said, do we even make an effort to go and visit those people who are cleaning the toilets in our university department? Do even go? Do we send our kids to their families instead of sending them to the lab? Why don't we tell them, go and meet these families and research and learn about it? That is what makes a campus climate. But we have understood a very different notion of campus climate, which is a very Western notion. We don't know people who made us possible as a successful person. So this is a huge mismatch I find. There is these people don't exist in the curricula anywhere in academia. So let me start with this theoretical concept of why we are talking about university. So as we know that we call it alma mater. So alma mater means which is a nourishing mother, generous mother. And in India we have this concept. Every culture has some kind of mother of education. So we have Vidya Ki Devi, So then why are we talking about university today in today's context? So I brought out some of these studies, very interesting, these people who are sociologists of education, and talking about the core of what makes university and what's the social responsibility. So this is a kind of, also it's an ideal type. They think that it's a very democratic space, and in a democratic situation, in an institution that instill liberal values of justice, enable ethical, moral, and political agency. To make such an institution possible, we must problematize the traditional notion of democracy and its long-lasting educational cognate. And that's where Henry Giroux said, university is a site of political and cultural contestation. I'm glad that most of these earlier speakers, they said there is something, even BRICS should go beyond economic. Tom sir also pointed in terms of like the public good of education. And that is what actually, beyond, when we think beyond economics, and that's where this cultural angle comes in, and that's where I'll focus on my presentation, why the cultural aspect is so important to understand the social responsibility of the university. Because the thing is, whenever the whole debate of the last 20 years, we are sick and tired of this word neoliberal, and it's only just we limit our conversation to economics. Where is the cultural aspect of that? So, as an institution or organization, the university works as the form of mediation between theory and practice. That's again the very ideal type. Then we have the, which I explored, that what's the other side of university? I call it the archival power of the university. That's the other way university contributes to the society. That again, you know, but think about the first example I gave of that maid. Are they also part of this archive? You know, you keep thinking that, and then you will see the responsibility of the university. So all these differences are documented in the university thing. So, but now with the change, especially in the present context, all these social movements going on in the area of higher education, for the outside world, like this, I drew because since the JNU, whole Azadi campaign started and all. So for many, they think that campus are utopia, their island, or that's the place where activists live, and they never leave the campus. They stay there forever. So this is one side to understand the university angle. But then there is another interesting side which we don't talk about in sociology of education, which is another perspective which I've been working on past few years, which is what does university mean for Dalits and OBCs? So I was interviewing, and this is a pretty popular, I like the quote that JNU is my social mother. This Professor Vivek Kumar, who is now heading the sociology department in JNU, he mentioned this again and again in his lecture. And what is this social mother? He said we have that without JNU, I cannot even imagine myself as a kind of the civilized being. And then a few years ago, when I was documenting one of the student union's contribution and see for the Dalit what can university mean, that is, I remember my university as a place where first time in my life I had full-time meals, And then this is the very recent picture, last year picture, where this picture is taken by this guy who taught the entrance exam. And he said, when I entered to take admission, this is the picture from the admission time. And he said there, he said, when my name was called and they shout that OBC, and he said, I just froze. I was not looking to my friends. I just wanted that moment to disappear. He said, he kept shouting, and I just didn't get up. And after that, I left. I waited next year when there is nobody from my class and can take. So why I'm discussing this, because this is the angle, I think, Professor, you were touching upon that issue, which you'll see why I'm showing this. Because we are missing the language of compassion in our higher education. We live in what my favorite thinker, Henry Giroux, calls disimagination zone. That cuts the possibility of imagining. We lost the public space that nourishes this imagination. Now in academics, when you think about the world, the immediate word that comes is world ranking, or the global ranking. Reality now mimics reality TV. As you see, the shared fear is more important than shared responsibility. And there are now, I just came from US and I saw the report, there are more policemen than the teachers, and the same situation here. So that's why I said the shared fear is more important now. Notion that profit making is the essence of democracy and economics is divorced from ethics, welfare, state is pathology, and capitalism is today's democracy. So now you see what I'm talking about. This is the data which is somehow we haven't discussed in this when we talk about higher education. Although this is a mixed data of school education as well. But you see in the last line where the question was raised in the parliament, and these 10,000 students who committed suicide. So last year I was working on a project which was on distress and discrimination in higher education. And I, as a sociologist, had no idea how to study suicide, because you need a different methodology. In fact, we don't have any methodology to study this kind of distress and suicide. And it was interesting. You all know the popular case of Rohit Vemula, but then I was following some of the cases, and it was very interesting that, and very pathetic as well, that right after Rohit Vemula's suicide in February 2016, February 2017, his close friend who came to JNU committed committed suicide in the same month. And as a layman, I've been thinking that suicides are generally done by those who are introvert. But now you see a pathetic situation in higher education, that first generation learners from Dalits and the activists are committing suicide. How pathetic it can be then, when activists are committing suicide. And so these are another, so we made data collection on all these news which have appeared in past 2-3 years, and there are in past 1 year, I think we have seen almost 150 suicides in higher education which we collected, and there is no actually proper documentation of those. So when we study that, what are the issues basically of this distress, because distress leads to suicide. So what leads to distress, especially among the first generation learners? So we figured out that English language is one of the factors which leads them to distress, and there are a lot of these studies increasingly done. So then, as you were mentioning, the issue of mental health. So there is no policy on mental health. There is no mention of mental health even in the higher education. So that's the constant denial. So people are writing about it, just recently they started, but this is a major issue now. So that's why, then in that context, I find ranking as myth. And why I call myth, because there is always an ideology behind the formation of a myth. As you have religious myth, but now it's the market who is the creator of these myths. The myth and ideology in their structural sense are synonymous. Because now market is applying the same code to human element, the code which they apply to the product or the community. So that's why they don't understand how to address issues of social justice and equality. The debate on social justice never goes beyond affirmative action, reservation, and we are not heading anywhere. Now you see the language and terminology they use: meta-university, strategic vision, a private university promoting public service. Here you see the corporate public pedagogy culture. Forget about this whole critical education or critical pedagogy. And so now these kind of corporate public pedagogy culture, now that develops within narrow economic relations. Corporate public pedagogy has become an all-encompassing cultural horizon for producing market identities. Now it will link back to the issue of identity, where all these distress arises. So market identities and mega corporation conglomerates, and for atomizing social practices, they give legitimacy to market-driven identities and values. So now, ranking, as I mentioned earlier, that used to be for products. Now human beings are ranked in the name of education or institution, because education is a product.
You have to start wrapping it up.
Okay. So now, how do you make sense of your life amidst this history, narrative, and ideologies, which I'm showing now to the. So, because there is no time, but I wanted to discuss this royalty and loyalty issue, which is a very prominent issue. But anyway, we'll do that in question answer session. So, so these were the thing I wanted to highlight, the activism part, that how the identities are emerging and challenging the existing. For them, is it a question of do they even care about this ranking or excellence or eminence? these people who actually fought for their identity assertion. You see, now you must have heard this Beef Festival. I wrote a paper on it. Beef Festival, and they have been celebrating for past few years. And then you have Asura Week in Eflu. They celebrate it now every year. Asura Week means like demonizing, celebrating the demon. And you see now the reaction at the same time. When it was celebrated, so the reaction came from the administration. And at the same time, see the kind of assertion, the boycotting the Onam festival, the harvesting festival. So this is now the marginal identities are coming in forward and taking lead, representing themselves. So and I was highlighting, see, this is another way that how critical education is being done. You must have heard all about Professor Kanchalaya, who gave this famous statement called, "Why should I worship the God who doesn't speak my language?" And then he started celebrating his birthday as Dalit Bahujan English Education Day. And this is being followed in Osmania University, that so many people started dedicating their birthday to Dalit Bahujan Education Day.
You're going to.
Okay, I think I should stop.
One last sentence you can say,
Yeah.
and I'm going to open it up.
Okay, I think, I should stop. Yes.
Okay, thank you, but we will have, more. I see that our time for presentations is up, but this has been such a rich discussion, and it sort of goes counterweight to what we've discussed previously. That's why I'm going to open it up for a couple of questions from the audience. Does you have a question?
Yeah, very important topic was discussed. I have one or two questions. What are the similarities and differences between the corporate social responsibility and the university social responsibility at present Indian context? Can we foresee that corporates and the education institutions can join together and go for the social responsibility, for the sustainable social responsibility, which is very important? And the education institutions, what are the areas they need to focus for sustainable and effective social responsibility? These are the one or two questions I just want to be discussed.
Okay, who would like to answer that?
Each for mine is be better other person's answer for that. Okay? I am the vice chancellor of that university. Better I avoid refraining from that. But thank you.
What there was statement saying there is closer reality between corporate and university social responsibility. I don't think that is how it is. Corporates have a very, very clear mandate and reason to commit to social responsibility. Universities, firstly, should not have and they may not have. And it would not work that way, that if you're trying to basically please in the same mold as a corporate. I have negotiated quite a few CSR projects with many of these corporate giants, so I know what exactly. So what they want to do is something that works in a public eye, and it's more like a cover. There is no content in the book, and they're happy with that. So there is this whole issue. I'm not saying all of them are like that. Some CSR initiatives have been excellent, but they're very, very few. Largely, it is to basically show or counter. If Rajasthan, somebody wants to make a cement, they'll counter it by creating an education institute. And that is how it works. So there is a quid pro quo in terms of how this whole thing are there. Universities do not necessarily work like that. I have been a part of a lot of initiatives that I did, and I think we did it not because university or somebody else told us to do it. We did it because we believed so. And those initiatives last. I think one thing which has to be differentiated is university generally will have ownership. of the social responsibility because it's self-driven. Corporates, it's a manager, and that manager may change when somebody changes the role. So these are two major differences which drive the quality and the engagement and what you call the sustainability of social responsibility.
Does anyone else want to add anything?
Yes, please. One question.
Well, to this question. Do you want to add to his point?
Here's a question.
Me? No, I'm having some different query. We are talking about social responsibility in university system and in corporate context. If we understand in the larger context, education, what is education basically? Education is not a method of earning, it's a way of living. Education as such is, when you are contributing education as such, I mean, social responsibility is a part of education. It's not a separate issue. If education doesn't mean like imparting degrees or technical education or something else. Education means core values and to create good human beings in the society. When it's a part of core values, when it is concerned with creating human beings, I think that becomes a part of your social responsibility. So my feeling, my personal feeling is that we need to impart more value education, which will definitely reduce down the problems in the society, maybe poverty, maybe societal tax, what you are talking about, maybe criminal or any other problem of unemployment and all. So that will diminish in the times to come. This is my submission.
Okay, so that's your comment. You don't have a question. Yeah.
No, I just an overbroad question because it was a wonderful panel. I'm counterweighting two perspectives. My only question is, I think this is a larger question on the thematic construct of the conference as well. I often see how the market is interpreted in these discussions. And here let me be the cross table person sitting in Marxist understanding of, see, market is a tool. We are all aware how capital by its own very nature right now, the fact we're sitting in this university having a dialogue, is that there has been something that the state in its own capacity has failed to do for a period of time, has created a big void. As a tool, the market is trying to, so there is somewhere a discussion that's largely needed how you can improve the functioning of the tool, vis-a-vis kind of saying how it's only crowding out the learning environment. I think that the dialogue of critical reflection, why it's so imperative to bring in, I think the idea of how the market and commodification of everything is destroying everything that we can speak of, I think we have to, now at this point of time, we take perhaps a step back, because that's how things are going to be, if not now, 5 years, 6 years down the line as well. So just anyone who the panel would respond.
I have a quick question, particularly for Gaurav. Very excellent presentation, interesting. I'm looking forward to read your book. But thinking about universities as site of resistance, with your experience yourself at JNU, then at UMass Amherst, which I know is a public state university in the US, and then now at George Washington, which is a private university, but both are very highly research-focused universities. So where do you see university as a site of resistance in your comparative experience in JNU and then at Amherst and George Washington University in the US? And if you can connect it with the larger theme of this 2 days conference in terms of research, role of research excellence in benchmarking and all these things. Do you have some thoughts?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay.
That's a question.
Yeah, thank you, Mosmi, for asking this. Actually, JNU has since its inception, has been a very unique campus compared to any other campuses in here and or in the West. Because the formation itself has been on a very, very liberal ground, and that's why you see most of the faculty and students, because like the other day somebody was asking the similar question that why JNU is so unique. I said the uniqueness lies in the student union itself. 71 when Prakash Karat formed a student union, so the student wrote the constitution of the, where else you find in anywhere in the world that student wrote the constitution for the student union and decide the education policy.
Ambedkar University.
Our university also.
So, yeah, no, that's good. That's why I have a lot of hope from Ambedkar University, and we have so many of our friends who are teaching there, and I hope they'll inculcate the same values and carry on the legacy of JNU. So this is actually that I don't see in any of the formation. Like, of course, UMass has been a public and very liberal oriented. I mean, I call UMass as a second JNU which exists in the US. So they have very good policies. But at the same time, if you see, like I was comparing the curriculum, the kind of courses they teach, we still don't have those courses in JNU. Of course, when we look at the Indian context, JNU has all those vibrant courses, like you have philosophy of science, you have science policies, which nowhere they teach in India, except I think maybe, I don't know whether Ambedkar started or not. But then you have UMass, these courses like, they have courses like social justice pedagogy, These courses I don't think any other campuses in the US. So that, but yes, of course, I still think that JNU is still a site of resistance. There are. Oh, I should stop.
Yeah, I think I don't think you've answered the question, but I think that will be another thing. By the way, I just want to tell you, you can get a degree in several universities in the States in critical pedagogy, which are Freire, Giroux, all the gang. So, I mean, that exists quite a bit, and we here at Jindal, we also have several chapters of critical pedagogy that's a requirement here. So that's all I want
Can I make a quick comment?
Yeah.
Okay, yes.
But yeah, go ahead.
See, we've been dealing with this whole issue of university as site of resistance, as a university. We've had issues earlier in the past, and my take is slightly different. Basically, universities of late are more vulnerable than many other places. So, resistance has to find a new language, because I think you have to have somebody who listens to you in order to make noise. And resistance is, basically a very purposeful, targeted noise towards an issue. And that's something that we're missing out on. I think we need to find or imagine or innovate ways in which resistance or dialogues around resistance actually reach out to the right audience. Somewhere we're not able to do that. And that's my own thing. When I keep telling some of my colleagues who want to do everything, our whole university, every wall is painted by some or the other graffiti. It's all about resistance, whether it's gender, whether it is caste, whether it is something that is happening in Kashmir, whether everything's all there, all covered up. There's no restriction in that. But somewhere when it comes to certain kinds of things, I always tell them that these are things which you can do within the comfort of university. If you actually believe, or you have the courage of conviction, you have to find a way of going out of the university. Because the important part is how much do you carry that whole conviction and the courage around an idea and a genuine concern that you take to the world. And that's something which, to my mind, universities fall short of. You have Kanaya and some people, but it's within the academic dialogue, fantastic, and it hugely influences students in terms of the way they develop the worldview, but I think there has to be something more.
And not only students, also the teachers' union.
But it starts with teachers.
Union.
If you don't have teachers of that level, there will hardly be any resistance. It will be there, but it will not be understood.
Okay, thank you. is it a burning question?
No.
It's a comment. You know what I was going to do though?
Vice Chancellor's office,
Yeah,
maybe.
but I was just going to ask everyone, so that everyone all the panelists don't leave with the sense of something unsaid, that you have one sentence that you would like to be the takeaway, one sentence.
Sorry, I couldn't get you.
Last word.
Last word,
Like
one
one
sentence
sentence.
long, and it's the sort of central takeaway.
Well, the SRM University is a private university, but we still have a lot of social responsibility. Let me tell you, I didn't talk about my university, I was talking about India and where it stands. We have a lot of social service. We give legal aid to all the 5 villages in and around our place. Let me tell you. We also give them free health service through our hospital at the campus. We also give them, if there is one who has short sight or long sight, free specs. I thought I should say that, but I didn't tell that because I was speaking at the national level, not at the corporate social responsibility of the university, which we also extend as a private university. And what he has said, the thing that, as a public university is doing it, private universities also do this. I just wanted to bring to the notice of every one of you.
Thank you. One sentence.
Adaptability, collaboration, enterprise, empathy, compassion, reflectivity, and multidisciplinarity are some of the issues that will matter as far as what students need to learn. Apart from that, I think a very keen and sensitive orientation to what we call social justice, being able to challenge status quo, including the models of development, and what we call the whole balance of state and private relationship. I think because this transformation is just taking place, while we may say there is no alternative, we have to look at ways in which these two things come together, where private initiatives don't happen at the cost of what we call exclusion. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think I made my point. Social responsibility needs to come back to core of teaching and learning. If my colleague, and doing research, if my colleague is working on post-colonial theory, that's her bit of being socially responsible. And at the same time, being wary of these marketization that's happening, and at the same time, disembed ourselves from it. So therefore, the discussion on marketization is equally important. Thank you.
As a member of the panel, I have a question for Dr. Ajay Pandey.
You can't ask it now, you have to let him.
Can I ask him now?
No,
Okay.
I'm sorry, you can't.
There is a high tea in VC's office.
Yeah, there's a high tea, then you can ask
Fair enough.
it. He gives us
Yeah,
one
thank you very
thought.
much.
Okay,
Thank you
sorry.
very much.
Okay, I think the final statement that I would want to make here relates to failures and questioning, self-questioning, right? Failures and self-questioning. So, looking at failures, we all talk of successes. We say that there's a lot of community work, a lot of social work, a lot of legal aid, etc. happening. So, where are the failures? And do we question our own existence? Education is all about light, I believe, right? Light and liberation. And if right in the vicinity of the an educational institution, darkness-ridden corners exist, then what do you question? Either question the existence of those darkness-ridden corners or the lighthouse. So I think that's my last statement.
Thank you.
I'll just say that we need more movements, resistance, more protest against this homogenization created by these neoliberal policies in the name of ranking and excellence.
And my last word is thank you all. You're